Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's much that Congress deals with that seems intractable. We struggle with the great issues of war and peace. We view climate change and its devastating impacts and are paralyzed. We look at the still simmering racial unrest in the painful events of Ferguson, Missouri, and largely are ignoring the underlying issues. But there is one area where government at the state and local level and here in Congress can make things a little easier, a little more sensible. That's dealing with our failed policy of marijuana prohibition. There was a sad article in the front page of the Times yesterday about a call center employee paralyzed since he was 16 years old who was fired from his job because he used medical marijuana in a state where it's legal on his off hours at home at night to control his back spasms. That had nothing to do with his job performance, yet this person was terminated. There's a certain degree of hypocrisy where someone having a glass of wine at home is treated radically differently. This is just one small example of a much larger problem. The cost of our failed prohibition causes untold damage to racial minorities, especially African American young men, who are much more likely to be arrested and jailed, even though they use marijuana no more frequently than young white men, jailed for something most Americans now think should be legal. That hypocrisy was on display with the NFL, who suspended a player for a year for smoking marijuana. But remember, the wife beater was suspended for only 2 games, until an even more graphic video of the beating forced the NFL's hands because of the public outrage. Yet this is the same NFL that encourages, some would say pressures, players to be pumped with shots and pills to dull their pain, which often leads to serious consequences for these players later in life, especially prescription drug dependency. Remember, we have an epidemic of prescription drug abuse that kills more people every year than heroin, methamphetamines, and cocaine combined. And of course, no one has ever been killed from a marijuana overdose. We're wasting lives, law enforcement resources, and money when we have more important issues to tackle. I'm pleased that my state of Oregon, which was the first state to decriminalize a small amount of marijuana, now may become the next state to legalize adult use. We've seen significant progress here in Congress to allow the cultivation of industrial hemp, allow Kentucky tobacco farmers and Oregon ranchers to grow hemp for products that are perfectly legal and you can buy in any city in America. We've helped rein in the federal government interference with the 23 states that allow over 1 million people to use medical marijuana. People like the families that are picking up and moving to states that permit medical marijuana to get the therapeutic use, to access to marijuana that can reduce the violent epileptic seizures that torture their children. It's time for us to do a reality check. Let's legalize, regulate, and tax marijuana, and then get onto those bigger problems that need our attention, like war and peace, the consequence of a failure to deal with climate change, and the epidemic of prescription drug abuse that's killing 3 or 4 Americans every hour. Let's get our priorities straight.